the next session is going to be a youth session. What we are trying to do is to open up a dialogue. Youth from other parts of the world are going to join the discussion. So if you want to follow or join the discussion, the hashtag is EDGECon 2015. You can join the discussion. So at this point, I will invite the moderator for this session, Francisca Forsen. Okay. On the panel, we have will be Ethel Kofi, Director, Edel Consulting. Then we have our own friend, the bicycle man, Bamboo Bicycle Man, Kwabena Danso of Boomers International. Good. We also have Madonna. Is Madonna here? Good. Please join us. We have Henry Sampa. Good. At this point, I'll hand over to our moderator to do the magic for us. So let's clap for everybody here. We cherish your time here. We hope the discussion is going to be very interactive. So, Francisca.
Thank you very much. And thanks to everybody for joining us here. We really do appreciate your time. And all protocols have been observed, so we'll go straight to our discussion. I'd like to reintroduce my panelists here. I'll start with Ethel Kofi. Ethel is a tech entrepreneur. I like to call her the tech girl. So she's tech entrepreneur and CEO of Edel Technologies. She's founder of Women in Tech Ghana, initiator of the first Pan-African woman in tech, and she's also a consultant for the World Bank. So that's Ethel. Okay, so away from the tech girl, let's go to the bicycle man. And that's Kwabena. Kwabena makes bicycles simply from bamboo. That's amazing. So, ladies and gentlemen, Kwabena. And to my immediate left is Henry Sampson. Henry's lead engineering and research officer at Dream Oval. Did I get that right? Okay. Now we also have Madonna Kendona Soa. The beautiful Madonna is founder and creative director of Raffia. It's a line of high-quality clothing made from cotton fabrics. They are hand-woven in the poorest parts of Ghana. So you're doing a lot of social work. Thank you very much for joining us. Now, these are very varying fields you're all coming from. We have tech, we have bamboo, we have Raffia. Madonna, I'll start with you. What made you get into this?
So a love of fashion and a love of economic development, so to speak. So my family comes from Navrongo in the Upper East region, and we've always had conversations about, oh, your cousins are not, necessarily, they don't have the opportunities you have, and I always wondered why not, It's mainly because of education. My father was, I think, the first educated person in his family, and that's how come we've had the opportunities we've had. It always struck me that there was a difference. And so when I finally decided to live my dream of having a fashion enterprise, I thought, why not just do it in a way that it actually helps people? And so I've always loved our fabric, which is known as gunja cloth, more commonly known as batakari, and decided that I would found an organization, a fashion enterprise that uses only that, empowering women weavers and some male weavers in the 3 northern regions. encouraging them to use their skill and become economically independent while clothing the nation in fabulous clothing. Yeah. That's what I started.
You talk about opportunities. FL, I'll come to you with that. How available are the opportunities?
Entrepreneurship in Ghana. Well, I suppose that, I mean, if you look at the facts, I guess you look at the figures, there are a lot of entrepreneurs in Africa, especially female entrepreneurs. There are a large number of women that set up little stalls or entrepreneurship is in our DNA. The challenge is micro-entrepreneur, where I have a small business that takes care of my family and I buy a little car, to the point where you have a large business which employs hundreds of people or thousands of people, and you're positively affecting the economy of the country that you're in. So in terms of opportunities for entrepreneurship, I think that Ghanaians and Africans in general are very entrepreneurial. It's the point where we're not taking entrepreneurship to the next level. We're having a conversation yesterday with a group of tech entrepreneurs within Ghana, and we're discussing, in Silicon Valley, the startups are complaining that they don't get funding. Nowadays, they don't get funding beyond $1 million. And I was like, $1 million for me as an entrepreneur in Ghana? I would be all over Africa at this point, right? So there are always opportunities for entrepreneurship. The opportunities for skill, that's a different story there.
Kabina?
For me, when we're talking about, I think there are a lot of opportunities in Ghana for which we can leverage as entrepreneurs to create, because there are so many problems in Ghana that needs to be solved. And entrepreneurship is all about solving problems. For instance, I am basically into I'm all of social empowerment. That is my goal. That is my vision, empowering the rural communities. And so there are countless problems that we face in this country that people can leverage on to create jobs, to create something for themselves. Every problem that we see is a job, is a business opportunity. We just don't have to sit there and say, okay, there are no opportunities. There are a lot of them. All the problems we are facing in this country are all sort of business opportunities which we can explore. So for opportunity, they are abundant in this country. But as Ethel said, the problem is how do we tackle these to turn them into business ventures? How do we turn these problems into opportunities to make something out of it?
Henry, and is it every problem that you can, creatively think of a business idea to fix that will last?
Okay, so I think the last bit is what complicates it. A lasting business, right? In solving any problem, and I'll go back to a project we did in school. We tried to solve the taxi traffic. I mean, then it was really terrible. And what we did was we built a sensor sort of in our math class and kind of programmed the traffic light not to be as dumb as they are today, right? And to act like the policeman that would stand there. If the policeman didn't stand there, it would be a huge problem. Now, we solved the problem. We solved it in a project, it became huge news and all that. Now, to implement the problem, the budget was huge, right? And so it's not just about the ability to solve a problem, right? Being able to solve a problem in a way which makes it affordable is usually what makes it viable for business, right? Exactly, and so thinking about it in a lasting fashion is the really difficult thing, because I think as students we did an excellent job trying to figure out how this would be done, but to implement it we needed much more to reduce the cost of each traffic light, and that we failed at, right? And that couldn't get implemented. So it's not just about a problem and solving it, thinking about how to scale in terms of that problem. If you needed to implement it across like the country, how would that pan out? I mean, that's the real problem in most cases.
Very well. Guys, at any point in time, you can chip in when you have. I see Ethel smiling every now and then. You can chip in any time you have a comment. But Ethel, how do you avoid creating problems for yourself when you found a big problem and you've got a fantastic idea to fix that problem?
Well, that's a tricky question. So I guess I will give an example of my company. So I always say my day job is Adele Technology Consulting, which is a technology software house. And there are lots of problems in our environment, and we're specifically targeted towards businesses, so we're a B2B brand. There are lots of problems that businesses face, right? Every day I have loads and loads of sort of ideas and problem statements. I find that the best way to find viable ideas and to see if it's commercially viable, if you can take it to the next level, is actually to test out the idea. So a lot of entrepreneurs have an idea, and they think this is the most amazing thing since bread and butter, right? And then they spend 1 year, I'm in the tech industry, so I'm going to give you an example in the tech industry. They spend 6 months to 1 year building the system, putting it together, and all that, and then they launch, and then nothing. I can say this because I started my first business, I started a long time ago that failed because I did exactly that, right? And I learned my lessons along the way. And the thing is, if there's a need and there's a need and there are people that willing and able to pay for that problem to be solved for them, then you have a market. Right, and then we can go and talk about, can we get funding, and we can, whatever. I am a proponent of businesses that grow with revenue, organically, versus, and I guess, again, I'm from the tech industry, so all my examples are from the tech industry, versus pumping a lot of funding into a big company and then just launching. If you test out your idea, so for instance, I'll give an example of something we've been thinking about doing. If for businesses, the biggest problem is sales, right? How do we get ourselves in front of the customer who needs us? And that's a problem statement that you think you can solve. Then fall in love with the problem. Spend time with entrepreneurs that have that problem and ask them how they've solved the problem in the past. And then when you have a solution based on what you've heard, you test it out on them. If people are willing to give you money, if enough people, that's another thing. If enough people are willing to give you money, then you have a product. Then you don't have a thing where you've launched a product or you've launched a service or whatever, and you're sitting there, and then you're waiting for people. That's how I've done it in the past. That's how I'm learning, just out of the frustration of putting all my savings into a business and having it go bust, that I've learned my lessons.
You that it's a huge risk to become an entrepreneur. So,
Yeah.
Pabna, for instance,
I think one of the problems a lot of entrepreneurs, or one of the mistakes a lot of us do, is that we look at the product from our point of view, other than looking at it from the customer's point of view. So we have a fantastic idea. Oh, this thing will fly. This idea is great. And then we don't even consult one or two people. Oh, if I do this for you, would you like it? People with the problem. Oh, if I do this, that will solve this problem for you. Will you be happy to have it? And how much are you willing to pay for it? And then we don't do enough research to find out if the idea we have is something that we can make a business out of. Then we go ahead and then bring out the product, only to realize that the customers don't need it. For instance, let me give you a classical case of my bamboo bicycle. We brought out the first product. A lot of people who came around in the community, oh wow, this is a great product. This is it. Then one person in the nasa bamboo die bebu. Immediately, a lot of people were like, became skeptical until we started using it, and then then we saw some white guys came, they started buying the product in large quantities, and then the people started seeing that, oh, this is, so until we saw, we realized that the product has a huge market in Europe and other parts of the world, other than Ghana. We wouldn't have had a business in Ghana. Even as at now, we don't really sell a lot in Ghana. We only sell the whole year we can sell 5. Meanwhile, we sell hundreds outside the country. So it's all about looking at it from who actually needs the product. How much are they willing to pay for it? We need to do a lot of research before we come up with the product. Other than that, we'll create problems for ourselves.
So research is key.
Yes,
and also
it's
talked
key.
about
Yes.
consulting other entrepreneurs. Well, Madonna, do you have similar experience with regards to the market, getting the market for your products?
Absolutely. So I agree with Ethel on the fact that your business has to grow organically. That's the best way you can learn, especially if you're risk averse. And I definitely agree with Kwabena about knowing your market. So I had an idea and I just sort of went into it. I didn't have any sort of entrepreneurship skills, and all these things I sort of learned along the way. My first mistake was to do too much in the beginning. If you look at our first collection, we had dresses, trousers, shorts, tops, like all kinds of things. And I realized that our selling points are our skirts. So the next collection, what I did was I made a very small capsule collection, 8 core pieces, mainly skirts, and they have sold very well. Another thing was knowing my market. I was like, oh, in Ghana, usually, a prophet isn't appreciated in their own country. So I figured that, oh, people might think it's a cool idea, but they wouldn't purchase. I should probably try and market it abroad. Big mistake. It was Ghanaians, or people living here who loved the idea, who wanted to invest in something that was made here by women entrepreneurs, by women artisans. So I think from my first year to my second year, sort of knowing my market and knowing what my customers wanted, that's basically what I needed to know.
But it's tough getting to know your market. It looks like you have to do a trial and error before you get to know. Yeah. There's no other way?
For that one, it's difficult if you want to do try and error. It depends on the amount of investment you want to put in it before you do that try and error. So if you have a few people, you can just talk to a few people. It doesn't mean like a huge large-scale research, but just talk to a few people. Like for me, we talked with a few bicycle dealers in Ghana, and then the idea was they were kind of skeptical. How can bamboo be used in making bicycle? And we showed them a prototype, like, oh, okay. But then they didn't want to, and even the price range. But we pitched this same idea to somebody in the US with a prototype, and immediately it picked up. So it's about you looking at what sort of investment do I need to make in doing the try and error. And most of the time, trying and error always fails. Most of the time it fails because you are not sure of yourself. You even going to the person, you are not sure who you are talking to, and things like that.
So,
I mean, for us, it's easier to measure. I think the thing about testing is that you need to measure. So if you look at it, the whole scientific process or method, you need to postulate something. You need to say you have a guess about something, and then you need to test that out and say that these are the measurements for it, and it's either makes what I'm saying true or it makes it false, right? Or you say that if what I'm saying is true, then this must be true, this must be true, this must be true. And you go about proving what you're saying is true by proving the sort of your assumptions based on your core assumption, right? And in tech generally, if I build software, it's easy for me to test that. It's easy for me to know what people are clicking and what people are not, right? But when you're doing more fiscal products, it tends to be harder, right? But it does not mean that it's not possible. Generally, the same kind of process works in terms of design thinking. Key thing, you need to have a lot of ideas as to what you're doing, right? In terms of a lot of innovative ways around what you're doing, and pose that out. You need to narrow that down to what people tend to like. And again, I mean, from what Kwabena was saying, right? Sometimes you get the market wrong, right? And the question is that you have enough funding to make so many mistakes, right? Which is the biggest. With tech, you can make so many mistakes very, very quickly. I mean, I can fail every week, very, very quickly, right? But can he fail every week? And it varies across industries. And the ability to fail more means we can innovate more. Because in my office, for instance, people are given room. And
but they can't say
exactly. And so the question is, even the kind of funding you give to different industries in terms of entrepreneurship needs to be different, because if you want to cultivate innovation and other things within those industries, they need to have room to operate and not to just always be really correct at doing it or else die.
Wow.
Okay. I'm not sure I agree that trial and error doesn't work. Because, okay, the way you're describing it is maybe making uninformed choices. That doesn't work. But trial and error can work. Again, with the example with the skirts, when you observe how your income, you see where it's coming from. If you see that this particular product is getting is bringing in more revenue, then you know that you have to concentrate on that, and then figure out maybe the rest of your product range. So I'm not completely against trial and error.
The disagreement.
That's what I said. It's not 100% that doesn't work. It works to a point. It can work.
Also because of the different
yes, it's also different.
Also.
For instance, let me give a classical example. We are currently only making like adult bicycles, and then there was this time I paid an idea to a friend of one of my distributors and say, hey, what do you think about children bicycles from bamboo? How do you think that? He said, oh, that's a cool idea. He also talked to some of his customers, and it's like, oh, we need, so currently, like, I have about 100 orders of case bicycles that I've not even started producing. And this tells you it's going to fly. And I've even had even in Ghana, there are a lot of people, and just this morning, Madonna was telling me, if you have case bicycle, please let me know. So it's something that tells you that it's going to fly. So me investing in such a product, I don't get scared in investing in it. So a lot of things goes on. As you also carry the business along, you get a lot of feedback from your customers to know exactly how you should structure your production and things like that.
But listening to all of you, young graduates from the university, you have a humongous task of thinking about a wonderful idea and implementing it. Is there any support coming from anywhere else?
Well, so I have two jobs, right? So I have the Adult Technology Consulting and Women in Tech Africa, which is the largest women in tech group on the continent. And we've done, and I've always said, even for both companies, one is a foundation and one is a company, right? I and the team, we did all this. Basically, we started with Adult Technologies. I used my savings, 2009, 2010, I used all my savings, and that went, right? And then I had to go and get a job. And I got a number of jobs. I was very lucky in that I worked with the Grameen Foundation. That's where I met Samson the first time. I worked with the Grameen Foundation. I ended up going to Nigeria, working in a couple of companies. I worked in Sierra Leone. But I was always aware that I would always be an entrepreneur. So even in the years where I got the desert years, where I worked for other people, I understood the things I needed to learn. I knew that when I started my company the first time, I was a developer. I was a techie, right? I didn't understand business. I didn't understand what it meant to, talk to your customers, understand your customers, put a product together. I didn't understand all these things. I assumed that because I could build software, and I was good at it, that everybody would want software from me, right? And so spent those years learning, and my last corporate job was as head of commercial solutions for Vodafone, where I understood how to use data to make business decisions. Understood, because one of the lovely things that I learned from working with Vodafone, my first week at Vodafone, I was head of commercial solutions, and I had to spend that week on the streets selling SIM cards, because you know what, that was the bread and butter of the business. And for me to be good at my job, I needed to understand the person that has a little stall on the street and sells SIM cards, and the salesperson that goes around that. So I needed to understand the mentality, I needed to understand my customers to be good at my job. I learned those lessons along the way. So when I decided again, this time to start the business with, so the savings accumulated again, I knew that I was in a better place, but there wasn't, and honestly when I started, I didn't have a reputation, nobody knew me. There were no organizations to talk to, there was nowhere to go, there is no VC funding person, in this, maybe in the, essentially no support. And so I started, again, this is why I'm a proponent of organic growth, right? I started 1 year into my jump from Vodafone to start the company. I started soliciting for customers. It's like, oh, you know, I could do this for you. I could do an IT audit for your company. And I started talking to people, and I started getting, I guess, side jobs and working weekends. And so this is what I did. And I grew the company to the point where I had a number of customers. So when I jumped, because I call it a jump, because it is a jump, because you have to pay bills, so you have to take care of your kids, you have to do all these things.
Essentially, it's hustling.
It essentially is hustling. With Women in Tech Africa, we've become an organization that has members in 30 countries across Africa. We're in London, Kenya, Ghana, I forget now. Forgive me if anybody else is the chapter leads are watching. And we're launching in Nairobi, and we're launching in South Africa and Nigeria. And we've done this with no funding. But again, because I understood that, and I had a very good network of people that I knew, that I understood that if we were going to launch in Nairobi, I had friends at IHUB, and I know a couple of women in the industry, and I said, can reach out and work my networks, which we've done with both companies, work the networks until we launched. We launched in Ghana with no money.
Let me go to Madonna. You deal with physical goods. Yeah. What's the support like? What's the support experience? Is there any?
Very little, to be honest. I feel like it's been people like Ethel, like just sort of talking to other women entrepreneurs, whether they're in your field or not, trying to get a sense of how they overcame their obstacles. I think the first year there were lots of coffee meetings, lots of meeting for drinks after work, just to sort of pick people's brains and figure out how to do something. A particular example was I had a small team working on the actual production of the clothing. So we would get the fabrics from the ladies in the north, and then we would have to make them into clothes. I did the designing, but I don't sew. And the demand was getting to be a little bit too much for my small team of 2 or 3 people. And I was like, I don't know, are there any factories in Ghana that are willing to do smaller quantities? Because I know there's some people who won't even meet with you if you have less than, let's say, 1,000 items at a time. And so I talked to a few people. One of my counterparts, who is the founder and creative director of Osei Duro, was like, oh, I know somebody, I'm going to introduce you. And she's the person producing for me now. So it was mainly conversations between women that helped me, I have to say.
Very well. We're talking about the journey of entrepreneurs in Ghana, and I'm sure that lots of you are taking notes. You've got questions and contributions. At the right time, we'll encourage you to join us in that discussion. But I'll come to you, Henry. How do you know, and especially the bike man, how do you know you're on track? You've tried, you've failed, you're surviving, you're up there, you're down there sometimes. How do you know you're on track? Don't you one day wake up and say, goodness, I shouldn't have done this?
Yeah, I think it's about persistence and being focused and committed to what you want to achieve. I remember we built our first couple of bikes, and one of our there were going to be a tour program in Ghana by one of our distributors in the US. And so he took one of our bikes for a customer. So I was there that evening like, Kwabena, why did you build me a bad product? Why did you do this? The customer is going to sue me. And I'm like, what happened? He said the bike got broken. So it was a heartbroken experience where he's like, he's not even going to get your product again. But we assured him, we just told him, look, we want to work with you, we want to go along with you. Just give us another opportunity. And so it's about when you realize that the product has a potential. For us, we realized that the product has a potential because as soon as we did the launch, there was a lot of requests coming in from people.
Let me butt in there. What would you have done after the launch and you realized that, you know, the requests weren't that many? Would you let that business go?
I think you should always have a plan B. So you have plan A, and then you should have a plan B. If this doesn't work, what is my next step? So for us, when we were pitching to the first customer as, oh, this is environmentally friendly, this is lighter, and all that stuff, we had a back plan that, okay, if this thing doesn't work with this guy, what is our next step? And so the next step was, can we actually produce these bikes as cheap bikes to substitute the African market as the ones we have, like important bikes to halt the importation of used bikes into Ghana. So that was the other idea. And then we did the pitching, and then it flew. So it's, as I said, but it doesn't come in a day. You go up, you come down, you go up, you come down. Sometimes you feel like, why am I doing this? Why don't I even quit? Because I remember in 2013, we had so much request. We had huge requests from different countries, and we didn't have the money in producing these bikes. So I was so much frustrated, I said, look, I'm done. I just want to stop this work and then find something else to do.
But Echo is laughing already. You need that as an entrepreneur. You need to have those times.
Yes.
What does it mean to have those times? Looking at the person you are today.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I'm sure everybody has, again, has launched something that hasn't worked. You do need those times so you appreciate the good times. But also, and something I forgot to mention, is you've got to have a circle of people around you that understand. Like Madonna and I talk, and like you've got to have a circle of people that understand or have been through it. So mentorship for entrepreneurs, that's really important. That either you find an entrepreneur who's a mentor, you surround yourself with entrepreneurs that understand, because the problem is when your friends are, especially if you've done like Henry did right out of school. I worked for a while before I did it, right out of school. Your friends get their first job, or your friends have the steady income and they buy a new car and they move into a new house, and you're still trying to figure it out. You need like-minded people around, just for your own mental health, to be honest. You need like-minded people around to have the conversation about, okay, this is horrible, but, people come back from it. I read a lot. I read all the biographies, the Jeff Bezos, the Amazon, the Starbucks guy. I read all these stories just to remind myself that I'm not the first person and I won't be the last person. And the people have gone through it, and you will survive too.
A lot of times to the question of what if the launch fails, a lot of times failure is not to take a U-turn. It's usually a pivot situation where you hit a point, you thought probably this direction, probably need to pivot and just turn a little bit from where you are. And that's what he was calling plan B there, right? It's not all the time that you give up on the situation. And for us, for instance, I finished, I should say, December 16th, 2006. We started the business in April, right? And yes, we started with nothing. And we started in the Ashesi lab. Basically sat there and tried to figure out, okay, what can we create for the world, right? Now, it was extremely difficult because our mates, because of the kind of institutions, got great jobs. And we were candidates for very, very good jobs, right? But we left that. And each of these guys we're talking about, rest assured, they had good money. And when you go for reunion, you basically don't want to go for reunion. You don't want to go for reunion. And the key thing is that and as Ethel said, you want to keep yourself sane. You want to keep yourself more focused that this is going to work out, right? But we essentially did not pay ourselves for a couple of years. We're hiring people, but weren't paying ourselves, right? For a couple of years. And the question was even how we survived. I'm pretty sure our parents would tell a different story about that. But the whole idea there is that when you are jumping, it's not all the time everything is calculated. It's not totally calculated. I woke up one morning and I said, you know, guys, let's just start. I mean, it was 4 months after we finished school. And I said, let's just start this thing. Okay, and we all say, okay, let's start. And we basically...
Some people never make it.
No.
Some people wake up one day with what they think is a bright idea and they never make it. So what makes you guys different from them?
We are not different from them. We could have failed. Just that we persisted.
That's what
we
works.
failed. It's not like we could have failed. We failed. But we actually persisted to make sure that we succeed. We learned from our mistakes and then moved on.
Looks like persistence is never ending.
Yes, it's persistent. So you need to be focused and make sure that, look, this is what, for me, let me give you a classical story.
Before your example, Madonna wants to chip in something.
Yes, I know, I agree that it's persistence for sure, but it also depends on who you are. Like I have a day job. I have a day job while I run Raffia. Somebody would have gone and done it full time, but I am risk averse. So I will have a job, I will fall back on my skills and wait till I'm at a point where I'm comfortable enough to do it full time. As you know, I'm the country manager for Reach for Change. So I work in the social entrepreneurship space. We fund early stage social entrepreneurs, and that makes me feel like I'm still connected to the space. I'm empowering people who are like me, but actually braver than me and do their work full time, and I know that I'm helping them while I'm building my business. So it also depends on your personality and who you are. So that's me.
Yeah, so for me, like getting back, for me, withdrawing was not an option because, like, look at this boy from the village who has been fortunate to come to Legon, and instead of staying in Accra, decides to go back to the village. And everybody thinks, what are you doing here? And so if you fail there, then it's like everybody gives their hopes on you. And so I was like, no, this thing shouldn't fail. Even if it fails, I'm ready to go forward. And then make sure that I prove a point that coming back to the village was not a waste of my time.
So it looks like entrepreneurship, and that would be my disagreement with Ethel. Entrepreneurship is born out of a certain failure of our society to connect, the graduates that are coming from the universities into the job market.
I think, and this is it, I think there are more entrepreneurs in Ghana today because of the persistent failure of our leaders over the times. Because there seems to be, because currently, if you don't fight for yourself, nobody is going to fight for you. Gone are the days when people complete university and there will be CEOs of companies and other stuff knocking at the door of universities looking for people to work with. Today it's not like that.
So are we being forced to
Yes.
become entrepreneurs?
The situation, one, people have that spirit. Secondly, the situation is also part of it.
Tell me your personal situation.
My situation, okay, so I completed Legon. And after my national service, I wrote about how many applications? Several of them. And then just when I was about to distribute them, something was like, I had already started a social program in my village. And I was like, why am I going to go around distributing all these letters? At the end of the day, not even a single of them will call you. And so it's just a waste of my time. Why don't I just look at what I'm doing in the village? Even though my grandmother who took care of me was against me staying in the village. But I said, look, if I have something doing here, why do I have to go through all that? Because I remember I talked with an elderly man who was like, oh, just give me an application. I'll give it to somebody. And then when he finally gave me the number of that person and I called him and said, oh, you take it to wherever you want to take it and then call me. And then when they invite you for interview, just call me, I'll call them. And I'm like, what is this? So I have to, so I just realized that no, I had to fend for myself. I had to get it out there for myself, by myself. And so that is what made me go into, and persistently pushing it, finally I was able to find a way in making
Henry,
it
it looks
happen.
like it's a lonely journey for entrepreneurs. And there's a lot of expectation, like he mentioned, from the government, from our leaders, but they can only do so much. Makes it a tough terrain.
Definitely. The thing for me is that it's not just about government, the expectation. I mean, my parents took me to the kind of school I went because they did not want to take care of me after school. They took me there as well because it was also an insurance policy. And
So the education really matters.
yeah, so right after school, deciding to start out was a terrible idea. In their perspective, that's a terrible idea, right? My dad tried to come along for like a year. I mean, he thought like within a year I should be on my feet and everything should be fine. I probably should be a millionaire by then and all that. And it didn't happen the first year. I mean, you could see physically on their faces and in their expressions that...
Well, they've paid a lot of school fees.
Yeah. So it's a huge thing, especially when you do get educated, to say that you are giving up on having a formal job to go and start out when the risk of you probably not be able to pay yourself for some time and all those things will be there, right? And a much larger risk if you decide to start a family in the process. Usually a very bad idea, but...
Hold that thought on family. Hold that thought. I want to pick Madonna's brain on this. How much does education play into becoming an entrepreneur? Because you're multi-skilled. You're doing how many jobs? Tell us about how education goes into that. Because what I studied is not what earns me a living today.
I don't think education has much to do with entrepreneurship, especially in this space, maybe abroad. But when I was starting Raffia, a lot of things I heard from my family, who are very supportive now, but I have to say they were like, oh, you know, we are from the north, we are not known to be entrepreneurs. That's the province of the Ashantis or the Kwahus, they are the entrepreneurs. Like, we don't have that skill. And so people feel like it's an innate thing, but it's something that you learn as you go. And frankly, education here, I don't think it has a bearing on it.
My story in comparison is I finished school and I got a job and I was very comfortable and I had a nice job and I got paid well and I had a good corporate career. And you know, when I was leaving Vodafone, I think I caused more problems than I had the job, but I have a passion that I wanted to help businesses get to the next level with technology and software. I felt really strongly about that. And in every job that I was in, I didn't get the opportunity to do that. We built software, but we built software for building software's sake. The understanding that technology could mean that Raffia can compete with Next because they're both online, right? Technology means that a small business that is in in Nima can compete with a big business. For me, that was a passion, and I tried to find it in jobs. This was before the first jump. I tried to find it in jobs. I didn't find it in jobs, but I am also lucky that I'm from an entrepreneurial family. So my father, my uncles, everybody has some sort of business. So when I jumped and when I failed the first time, they said, no, it's okay. They said, no, it's okay. It's okay. It hurts, but it's all right. You figure it out, right? And the next time, when I started the next time, they would say to me, okay, this is what you need to do. This is what you need to do. I began to listen to them, which I didn't listen to them the first time, but I began to listen to them and listen to their stories and begin to watch my uncles and my dad and watch how they did business and how they interacted with the customers and begin to use that. So again, I guess stories are dissimilar.
How best do you do business? You mentioned that entrepreneurship is like is in our DNA. I disagree with you on that. I think there's also buying and selling.
So it's not, no, okay, so entrepreneurship, I think that as Ghanaians, buying and selling, and that's a form of entrepreneurship. It's innate. It's like everybody has some sort of store and sort of running something. I think that's something that as Ghanaians we have. We just haven't developed it to the next level. In terms of education, I wanted to add that there are people that are far less intelligent than us that have entrepreneurial backgrounds that are doing amazing things. I've come to learn the school. It's great, but I don't think that's in terms of being an entrepreneur. I mean, I've been thinking about talking to my team for a couple of years now about doing a sort of an entrepreneurial apprentice program, which essentially we would bring 1 or 2 people for a year, and they would earn a salary, like a starting salary. It's somebody that maybe just left school, is risk averse, not sure if they want to do it in a year, and they spend a year learning from us as a business and understanding what it meant in return for sort of working for us and pay, and doing that for a year and figuring out whether or not they wanted to be an entrepreneur, because really you have to learn off the job, either watching people or like learning from books or whatever, but you don't get it from school.
I kind of like to disagree a bit with the current submissions. And the reason being, I mean, I have a pure computer science background. Never appreciated accounting, all this kind of stuff. I mean, in my mind, if I want to understand it, I would understand it. So it's really not that important, right? But it was really the reason underlying our initial lack of skill. Right, and the truth is, you have investors who would take people to the next level, right? And they only appreciate your books being in a particular way, or they only appreciate you presenting your idea in a particular way. So you can hire for that, right? And the thing I'm talking about here is, do you need to know about the fact that your books should be in a particular way, right? So I'm not necessarily thinking about exactly what's in your book, but we're part of a seed program, a Stanford seed program recently, and the only reason I like it is not because I get to do my books. I actually never do my books, right? The reason I like it is because it presents the reality between the guy who has the money and your idea you want to scale. Right, and I think such forums are really important. They may not be like formal education settings, but I think what really disturbs a lot of businesses today is the lack of skill, and that's a lot of reasons, supply chain issues and all that. And some of these things have been solved by numerous people across the world, right? And having that kind of forum to exchange information, whether formal or informal, is beneficial to an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I think to add to what is going on right now is that as an entrepreneur, you don't stop learning. You learn every day. You go on to learn. For me, I studied Arabic, philosophy, psychology at Legon, and I'm doing bicycles. You understand? And I realized that if I don't know my books, somebody will just come in, just take your money. You wouldn't realize because you don't know the accounting.
So you need to get involved.
You need to get involved in it. So you need to learn every bit of your business. You need to understand every bit. What is this? What is going on here? So if something is not working well somewhere, you really know that this is not. So you need to learn, and we don't stop learning until we die. That's entrepreneurship.
Madonna?
I agree that you have to learn every bit of your business, and I agree about accounting. I did accounting and did not love it. So when it was time to actually keep my books, I turned to technology. I looked online to see if there was any sort of software I could use that was free, obviously, and decided to go with something called Wave, Wave apps. So what I do is every single transaction, I just put it in, and then it does all the work for me. So yeah, technology also is a great way.
You borrowed from Harefield.
Indeed.
So let's talk about that, connecting, because you can't make it on your own. You need somebody from another field to bring in something to make yours work. How does all that play out?
For me, I think it's very necessary that you can, because as an entrepreneur, you can also not do everything. You need to have support from other people who also have the experience in other fields. So for me, I have a friend who actually does my accounting works for me. And luckily for me, he gives me pro bono service, so it's good for me. And apart from just giving me that service, he also helps me to put the systems in place. So he told me, look, the way you run in your business, if something is going wrong, you won't realize it. Have a suppliers list. These are your sort of suppliers that you are getting your supplies from. Don't buy it from anybody. That way you get discounts. And if somebody goes out to buy anything and comes and tells you, I bought it at this price, you can easily verify from your supplier, because that is where they are supposed to be bought. So it checks, it helps with accountability and also with reducing costs. And also like putting the necessary systems to make sure that cash flow and everything is being managed very well. And I have a legal advisor too here, who actually
That's also pro bono?
No. He takes, I provide like a retainer at a small fee, and he really helps me with, because I don't have any legal background. And so he helps me going through my contracts, international, and also helping me to put the policies, what are the policies we need to, and also like meeting the compliance issue, because in this country there are so many compliance as a business you need to meet. And so if you don't have a legal person guiding you in all these processes, it's difficult.
It's difficult.
So you really need other people with expertise to help you. And that is why your team is very important. Your team as an entrepreneur is very important. Even if an investor wants to invest in your company, they look at the kind of team you have and the skill set that they have.
It's interesting what he's raising. We're going to round up in a bit for the questions, but Ethel is nodding when you mentioned your team is very important. What's it about? Trust?
Okay, before I answer that, I was going to add to the thing we don't do very well is strategic partnerships in business in Ghana. And there's a trust element there. There's a thing, and I've tried a number of strategic partnerships that I've lost money on, so I take a bit more time to do it. But there's something we don't do well, where if companies have complementary services where they can work together, because we are very good with the one-man company mentality, and that doesn't help. In terms of team, you as an entrepreneur, you can't do everything. And I'm hiring right now, and my biggest headache is that I'm not even worried about hiring for skills, I'm hiring for attitude, right? Because we will find problems on the way, we will come up with roadblocks. And I'm looking to hire somebody that has minimal skills, but their ability to look at a problem head on and say, okay, I'm gonna try it this way. In my company, I say, I'm happy to forgive, but I can't forgive in action, right? So if there's a problem and it happens, I don't know whether it's the education system, I'm not sure what it is. It's where, because sometimes people can't figure out what to do, they would rather err on the side of not doing anything. I'll forgive a mistake, but I cannot forgive inaction. And that's the hardest, and I've had conversations this week because I've been doing interviews this week, is just where we don't understand that, I don't know, it must be the educational system. We just don't understand what it means to engage your brain and use it, as opposed to get told what to do. So it makes it harder, it takes longer for me to hire. It makes it harder for me to hire, but I will hold out for 6 months for the right person for the role. Even if the person had enough skill set, you can train, you can send them on a training program. If you don't have the right team, it means that you're constantly struggling on your own to make things work, and that's, you fail. Right? On my complimentary card, I have the best team wins at the back, because it's important to have the right set of people in your organization, especially as a startup, especially when you don't have the kind of budgets. You don't have the kind of budget, say, a bigger company should hire. So it's very important to get the right people. We're not trained we're not training in our schools for the jobs. So you're training for academics, you're not training for the jobs. And they come out and you've got to spend a year. Yeah, you spend a year trying to get them up to the level.
You're calculating how much you're losing in that year.
Yes, yes.
Okay, but Henry, tell us about the experience at Dream Oval in constituting the best team.
So what's great for us is that for a long time, attrition was zero. Nobody would be hired and would leave. If somebody would leave, they were going to do a master's program, right? And that was just a couple of people. And the main reason was, at the time we hired a number of people, it was clear we're not hiring because we're going to pay them something great, right? You need somebody that fits the culture. And so the question is that, how do you see your working environment? Should somebody who is a subordinate be able to say that this is not okay? It's going to fail. Should they have a voice? Do you encourage people speaking up before things go bad, right? What kind of culture do you want in the office? Would you be okay if somebody in the middle of working picked up a guitar to play because has a code block and cannot think again, right? What is okay by you? And actually, people do pick up guitars to play in our office, right? And it's not a problem if you are delivering, right? If you're not delivering, then the music is not nice.
So whatever you do, you have to deliver.
Yeah. But the idea there is that our interview process is not to ask you to do an aptitude test, and it includes actually working with the team for a week. That's the last bit. And team members will say, let's pick or let's not pick this guy. And the key thing is having a wrong fit is almost like wearing a wrong kind of, usually not on top, but underwear, right? You're walking in town and it's always a pain.
You're always walking, putting up a smile, and you feel uncomfortable.
It's always a pain. And it's almost like you cannot undress in town and just take it off, right? And that's the issue with having a wrong fit, right, for a team member. And it's crucial because you do not want to micromanage. That's counterintuitive to say that you want to scale and yet you would do everything, right? And so for us, it's always been a very meticulous process. And for an entrepreneur, think about it. It's really expensive hiring every new person. So you might as well just put in all the effort to make sure that it's as right as possible. You not get it 100%, but it's as right as possible, and you would not have to do a lot of micromanaging. And that's guided us.
Accessible Texan of the University of Ghana. Yes, we also like to thank our sponsors for making this possible. The dignitaries who came through, we thank you very much. And also Tekura for the lovely furniture on the stage. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think they deserve more than this.